authenticity I find super important. So whatever I post, I think it needs to be authentic from yourself. It needs to be something you stand behind. You sent me a few questions and I put them in AI and I said, yeah, what would you say? So it also gives me perspective. Listen, we will always have conflicts, and I think sometimes conflict is fine, definitely in managing people. There is one post that I've always wanted to put on LinkedIn that I haven't done yet, and I really think I should do it still.
You can send more messages with the just industry personalization. So in the end, you get better results. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Personal Branding for Business podcast. I'm Olga Bondareva. I'm the founder of ModumUp, social selling agency. And on this podcast, I interview inspiring and interesting people who build their personal brands and leverage them for business success. And today, I'm speaking with Joosten, Regional Director at Vodafone Americas and Partner Markets, and a member of Forbes Technology Council. Hi, David.
Hi, Olga. Nice to be here. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining me today. So let's start with the interesting topic of authenticity on social media, on the internet. And what do you think about that in the world of curated posts and polished images? How do you personally maintain authenticity online? What do you think about it?
Well, we obviously also have ghostwriters, and we do also release quite some posts on a regular basis. I don't release anything before I've seen it myself. And until I've given my own perspective or my own twist to some of the things that we like to post. I think the worst thing you want is things that come across too salesy or too made up. That people, the first thing when they read it is they say, well, yeah, he did not write this, or it's not real, it's too perfect or anything like that. So I read everything. And when I'm not okay with some of the things that would be posted, I do change them quite significantly, or I just don't post them at all. So it needs to fit my own personal ideology, my own perspective. So I'm quite strict when it comes to that.
Great. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Actually, ghostwriters, it's interesting because I know that some top managers or entrepreneurs, they think that if they work with ghostwriters, it automatically means that their content is not authentic. But your perspective is different. Mm-hmm. So I think it's amazing because just working with some help with ghostwriters or someone else doesn't mean that there is no you in this content. Yeah. So
no, and there is never. And first of all, we don't use that many ghostwriters, but sometimes we do. And even if you use a ghostwriter, it will always be based on an interview, a preference of what topics you want to put out. If you, for example, post things on Forbes, they are extremely strict when it comes to the proofreading. So it is always professional support that you get. So I wouldn't necessarily say well, it's a negative thing. It's definitely it can absolutely add to stories. So it's definitely complementary to writing your own personal opinions or your posts on the internet.
Yeah, agree that ghostwriting and editorial help just makes it easier, faster, and better. Yeah, than just because top managers or entrepreneurs, I think it's sometimes difficult to allocate enough time to create content themselves completely from scratch. Yeah. Are you a different person on the internet and in your real world? Like the real person and your social media images, are they different or the same?
Well, I typically don't post a lot of images, in all fairness. So I don't post anything personal in the sense that my family life or maybe sometimes events that we do as a company or product launches or things like that, we will post that, but it's all very much in a professional context. Am I different personally than what I post on the internet or post as my digital image? Yes, most probably. But in anything you do, there is always some level of authenticity that comes across. I think the choices that I make for the employer that I work for, we'll talk about that, I guess, in a minute on purpose. What is important? Your own, let's say, preferences in how you position yourself. I think that is where the personality comes across. But I don't post anything online that has to do with my family or my children or my friends or something like that. So that I keep very separated. But you can't distance professional completely or personal completely from your professional image. So there will always be an overlap in that, and you will always find that.
Do you have any personal topics that you feel comfortable to share, or just only professional, nothing else?
No, I'm confident in sharing, like, personal. I hold family life quite high. So the values for raising children, or then the content that you share that it's appropriate for children, for example, that those things to me are very linked. I find it was one of your first authenticity. I find super important. So whatever I post, I think it needs to be authentic from yourself. It needs to be something you stand behind, and values are I think critical in doing that. So those things for me are linked. So I think personal life. I think humor is something that is very important. So I like to laugh a lot. So also in the posting that I do, I think you need to. It can be funny from time to time. So. Those things are important for me. I like everything that has to do with wellness. I find it very important to take care of my body, to do a lot of sports, to switch off from time to time. And again, those are things that I will also speak about when I have professional engagements. Is the importance of mind and body, and really looking after yourself. Food is super important. I'm Belgian, so gastronomy is an important one, but also eating right are things that I hold very dearly. Getting the right supplements, doing the right things for yourself, and I think those are all, I would say, personal aspects to my life that again will find some through one way or another reflection in my professional life. So I find wellness important for my employees. I think things we do, like if we do activities or we have specific months where we pay attention to one specific topic. So in a lot of those cases, wellness and mental well-being and those kind of things are very important to me. Another one, diversity, I think is very important. So I find everybody is born and is equal to one another. So those are things that I hold very dearly, and I think I do like to talk about those things, and they are personal and professional. And I work for a company that allows me to do that on the front end and has the same values that I have, which. If that's the case, then you are also aligned. You don't need to position yourself in a different way than you really are, and that adds again to the authenticity that I find very important.
That's great. Yeah, that company's values and your personal values align with each other. And actually, it's interesting that some personal topics about well-being, about how you eat, how you do some sports and other activities, they are very relevant to the business community, and many people would feel related and could add some comments on that. So these topics are really important, and people discuss them. Yeah, great examples. Thank you. And what are topics you will not share if you don't have any choice?
I think I would not share irrelevant things. So sometimes I see people posting things online that I think are irrelevant or where it's too much. and it actually adds no value to anybody, like what they did that morning or what they what is a minor detail or something like that. So I will always, when I post something, I feel it needs to be relevant. It needs to be a topic that really makes sense. I think that's the first thing. Second, political things I will not post. I think it's really not necessary to do that. Or on professional forums, I will not post any personal things. So like pictures of my children or something that I'm doing purely personally, I will not post that. And then anything other, let's say, extremism or whatever, like crime, violence, and those kind of things, I absolutely despise. So I would never do anything like that as well.
Yeah, these topics are very risky. About your hobbies and family, I would be happy to see some of these kind of posts in the newsfeed, because I think it's interesting to learn more about the person, not just from professional side, but also from the personal perspective. So if you feel comfortable one day, it would be interesting.
I don't know. I think there are forums where you do that, like Instagram or Facebook and those kind of places, and then there is professional, let's say, initiatives through work, through LinkedIn, those kind of things, and I try to keep those two quite separate. For example, I don't do any Twitter either, for example. So I typically find Twitter. That to me sometimes already goes into the idea of like, is this really relevant? Is the world going to be a better place if I post things on Twitter? But again, this is my personal preference, and everybody is different, and everybody uses social media very differently. So for me, and that doesn't mean I will never color outside the lines or anything like that, outside what I think is acceptable to me. But that's a bit where I until where I go.
Yeah, it's a great question about making the world a better place, because sometimes we post something meaningless. And it's changed the focus to posting of some meaningful content, useful, valuable information to other people. Yeah, I love this approach. And what do you think, should someone be vulnerable on social media, showing their I would say weak sides, or maybe some failures, mistakes, or it's not something good for a leader, for a top manager? What do you think?
I think definitely leaders should show vulnerability. I think nobody is perfect. I think, to me, I've always felt vulnerability in leadership to be super critical, is sometimes admitting that you are also a human, that you make mistakes, because that also sets like an atmosphere, or let's say an environment where people are allowed to fail, and failure is just a part of life. The only issue is if you fail multiple times and you never learn from it, then it's probably not very good. But I think we all fail. And I've gotten to the position that I have today by failing many, many times. And I think admitting it, self-reflection, are super important qualities for a person if you ever want to grow. I don't think you should, every time you make a mistake, you should post it online or whatever. And I think there should definitely be a balance, but I think leaders should be able to admit when they did a bad thing, and that I think also creates connection with people. This vulnerability, or admitting mistakes, and giving your perspective on what happened to you and what you learned from it and how you're going to do better. I think people like that. I think it's something that doesn't happen enough.
What do you think? Does it change your relationships with your team when you share some failures, mistakes, and show your vulnerability?
Yes, because I find performing well, or high performing teams, I find that super important. And you cannot always be the one that says you didn't do this right, or you talk about things that didn't work well, and then never admit something you did wrong yourself. It's like you can't pretend to be perfect all the time. So you need to be open and honest and say, well, or maybe not, or we did something wrong. It was not, maybe I gave someone a wrong instruction, or maybe I also have a boss and maybe I didn't like align properly with him or her on certain things that then had an effect. I think, you need to be able to give direction and lead your team, but never admitting you made a wrong call or whatever should be a part of that. I think you should definitely do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I worked at Microsoft, we were saying that there are no mistakes, there are learnings. So that always think about it differently, that you learn something new.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean, I think it's a mantra a lot of companies have, but that doesn't mean it always happens. I think sometimes as you go up in corporate institutions, this alpha leader picks up again, or you see a lot of the alpha leadership skills. I don't know if it's the right term, by the way, alpha leadership, but where
we understand what it means.
Very directive, very demanding, very telling people what to do, and instead of creating like collaborative groups and a collaborative environment. But you do see a lot of that, especially at the I would say at the higher levels of some companies.
Yeah, it's easier, I think, that be an authoritarian leader who just says what to do. Yeah, it's easy and fast, but does it help the team to develop their skills? Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. So let's talk about technologies, because one of your recent posts on LinkedIn was about AI, how to use AI, and that it's important to still involve some human efforts using AI, that you need to think and to implement AI in the right way. And what do you think about using AI for building your personal brand online or just in any case? So how do you think AI could change how business leaders and top managers, entrepreneurs build their personal brands? Or it doesn't?
I think, no, it definitely will. I think there's a lot of benefits from AI. I definitely love AI and all the good things that it will bring to the world. I do sometimes think that when it comes to profiling or branding and using AI for that AI might sometimes come across as too clean or too polished. If you, for example, you write a text and you let AI kind of perfect that or improve it. I sometimes can tell when I get emails or when I see certain content that it was made by AI. And actually, you can put a text in another AI and you can say, well, was this written by an AI? And I think if people start noticing that it is too perfect and it is too polished, I think then it's probably not right. I think, again, to this authenticity, when you write something, it needs to come across as an authentic written text or opinion, and AI can probably sometimes change that to some extent. So I do think you need to continue to be very critical, that if you use it, definitely use it, but be aware that, first of all, it's not always 100% factual either. But other than that, I do think it adds a lot to correcting grammar mistakes, only to being able to put a specific sentiment into an opinion that you want to use, to get a different opinion. Also, when you're thinking of posting something, so it's going to give you much more a richer set of content that you can use. It'll also help you to publish content quicker. So it is going to help whoever who wants to use it. To speed up, to come across as more professional, but it doesn't change the fact that it's your personal content. It needs to be reviewed. You need to make sure that it continues to be authentic and that the data is accurate. So it's not always accurate. So I do think we need to always remain vigilant that it is that's not perfect.
Yeah, fact checking is important. I also like your idea that when you use AI, you need to somehow rewrite it, change it a little bit, because actually I think that especially active users of AI, they already understand, they feel this AI style, and they can identify it very easily. Yeah, so it makes sense. But on the other hand, yeah, AI really helps you to talk with, for example, not just if you use AI, you can speak with any expert, any professional. For example, when I created our interview questions, I asked AI, for example, what questions would some famous podcasters ask? So, and it gave me a lot of ideas for the questions. So it's a great opportunity also to
Definitely,
talk.
and the stuff that comes out is good. Like for example, you sent me a few questions and I put them in AI and I said, yeah, what would you say? So it also gives me perspective. So you just need to make sure that the conversation doesn't happen just between the AIs, but then there's also that you still choose the question you're going to ask.
Oh yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's I used the AI to create questions. You used the AI to prepare answers to them. So yeah, but still we've added a lot of personalities to it, and yeah,
Exactly.
I think it makes sense because we saved some time, but on the same time we reworked it, and it's still about us. It's not just something AI generated. Still, humans are here.
We're still talking to each other. We cannot read and we cannot type at the same time. So imagine how artificial that would come across if we would be reading it or have pre-studied like the answers. No, I think it can give you some context and give you some directions where you want to go to, and and you give in the end your own opinion about it. You don't always have to use it. So no, I think it's definitely worthwhile and a very interesting evolution.
Great. And for example, let's imagine a leader who is building their personal brand on social media and just online. Do you think, does it influence their decision-making process or their business strategy? So does it influence their business decisions or something like that?
Probably, I guess to some extent, as you are building an image and a brand, you do get feedback on the things you do, because it's usually quite, whether it's the amount of likes or sometimes also the commentary that you do, or it's the people that support you in building that brand. So you get feedback on that, on how you are doing, and it will give you some additional perspective in where to go next, or after that, or maybe optimize or fine tune your initiatives. So definitely, it will help you in that. Again, as you post things, you look at other opinions. You try to not post something that other people have said, to make sure that it's authentic. And with that, you are confronted with other content that is out there, and that also will give you the possibility of reflecting on, are you doing the right things? And so I think any type of additional information is worthwhile to assess. And eventually, if it adds a perspective, it will potentially also change decisions you make, or the choices that you make in future type of social media postings or any type of decision that you take for your company.
And talking about corporate branding and your personal branding, you've mentioned that your values and company's values are aligned, and you don't have a conflict here. But let's imagine that some leaders, they do have a conflict. So their values and their personal brand is different comparing to the company's brand. What do you think? What should they do if it's a large corporation, for example?
I think you need to assess for yourself how important it is and how conflicting it is with your own personal feelings. Like, I think if someone is day in, day out having to represent something that they don't feel good about or is misaligned with their own personal perspective. I think how critical is that for you? Because it goes both ways. You cannot be unauthentic in dealing with people or dealing with a company. If you're really not aligned, you can fake that for a while, but it's not going to. I don't believe that's going to last.
Yeah, living in conflict, in this tension, I think it's really difficult to do it for a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you worked in your company for many years, and it means that you don't have a conflict. Everything is aligned. Yeah, that's great.
Listen, we will always have conflicts, and I think sometimes conflict is fine. Definitely in managing people, sometimes things need to come out, whether it's in a professional life or in your personal life. Conflict will always happen. And sometimes these things need to come out. I think if you keep things bottled in too long, then they become real frustrations. So putting things out in the open, I think is definitely a good thing. Not continuously, but sometimes if there are things that are really bothering you, by not talking about them and by leaving them the way they are, they're not going to resolve themselves. So they definitely need to be spoken about. Me staying at Vodafone for now, almost 18, 19 years, I think it is. I've always learned continuously and been able to change and experience new things. From a value perspective, we've always agreed well around and also the brand that I represent, the people that work for me, the international nature, the cultural diversity, the people diversity. But there's definitely been conflicts and there's definitely been difficult situations, but I've never been at a point where I couldn't resolve these or where they became so critical that I felt, oh, no, I cannot work for this company anymore.
Thank you. Yeah, when you work with people, I think conflicts, they will happen anyway. Yeah, but how you resolve them, it's important. And in one of your interviews in the Interface Media, you mentioned that it's important to set high standards and how this approach influences your personal brand, influences your career in general. High standard approach.
I've always, I never really liked, especially when I did sports and all that, and maybe that was not always great either, because I always wanted to win with Monopoly or just normal sports, where maybe I shouldn't have put the bar as high and not always trying to win and something. But I've always had this feeling of doing better than expected, putting the bar a little bit further than what I potentially could achieve. I think if you go for, let's say, 100, then you'll probably maybe reach a bit lower or just at it, or maybe a little bit higher. But if you put the bar at 200, by setting standards much higher, makes you also think differently in how to achieve a higher type of performance. And I thrive better in environments where you do that. I like ambition, and I like dedication and goal-oriented and trying to do things differently, changing the machine a little bit, like the 1% every day to then get to these cumulative gains. And that's the environment I like to operate in. I wouldn't just like to work for example, a middle market or a mid performer or something. I work for the one that has highest ambition to get to somewhere, or one that is like really good. I like setting high standards for myself and for my team, and I think it also motivates better than a mediocre standard. So
yeah, it's very motivational. I was listening to you, and I feel this motivation to work, to do something, to achieve something new. Yeah. Thank you for that, these emotions. If it's comfortable to you, could you share your purpose, maybe your life purpose or your professional purpose? What do you think about it?
I think three things. One is be a good father to my children and give them the values that they need to succeed in life. So I think that's a super important one for me. I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old. So that to me is definitely one of the most important ones. And then secondly is be a good person, is do the right things for the world, take care of nature, take care of be nice to others. So that to me is important. And then third is be a good partner to my girlfriend, and think that they're about common values and common objectives, and think about each other's feelings and those kind of things. So I would say those three are super important. And the second one, is your relationship with the world. I think is important. Is when you don't live alone on the world. So being mindful of others is super important. I wouldn't say I'm perfect at it by all means. Maybe a fourth is be correct good to yourself. Is know what is important for yourself. Maybe that part of spirituality is continuously evolve as a human being. Who knows? So that's those are the things. Maybe the last 5-10 years that I started thinking is how do you evolve as a person. So I think that's quite important.
Such warm and nice values. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think it gave us a little bit of this very inspiring and comfortable and warm atmosphere. Yeah, that's amazing. So moving to your career, you've lived in several countries and you know 4 languages, which is a lot. Yeah, which is great. And what do you think? How do you think your international experience somehow influences your leadership style and your personal brand, or does it at all?
Yes, I think you need to be mindful of different cultures and different ways of how people treat things. So you cannot expect to be the same or behave in the same way in one country as you do in another. So you need to be aware of certain cultural sensibilities and how different cultures behave or react to specific things. I've always wondered a bit around how important is it to speak multiple languages, and to what extent that has really helped my career evolve. I always think that the languages that I speak never really influenced my career that much. Other people say, well, that's not true because you might have been hired for that and things like that. So it definitely has given you like an added value, but I don't think in any of the interviews I've ever done that they tested my language skills or anything like that. So I don't know. I felt for myself sometimes that it was a little bit overrated.
But did it feel maybe that it helps? Sorry for interruption. That it helped to communicate easier with someone, that they become more loyal to you, that you know their language, for example? Or it's not the case?
Absolutely, it definitely has helped. So, for example, I've gone to meetings in countries where the other people didn't speak as fluent, and the fact that you then are able to speak French or you speak German or any other, it will definitely help you. But I never really felt it was like that was the reason why I am where I am today. Cultural adaptability and the fact that I've lived and worked in many other cultures, I'm sure it has helped. But again, I don't know if that is really the critical skill for advancing in your career. I think it all helps, and I would have probably not been able to do certain things if I hadn't have it. So it does definitely help you with things, but I don't think it's that those are the things that really make a massive difference in career advancement. It's smart. It's the same like with an MBA. An MBA is great, and a lot of people say, well, it's what you need to start. most probably, but I don't think everybody that has an MBA is going to advance to become the CEO of a company. There's a lot of people with MBAs out there. And I was in school with people that did much better in school, that probably studied much longer than I did. And they took different choices, and the graduate certificate not necessarily was the reason where they ended up their career. So I think all these things help. I think other core values like dedication, professionalism, creativity, drive are probably more important than these, let's say, additional things that are good, but I don't think they are determining really for real career advancement. I think it really sits in your character, in your personality, that how bad you want something, also, and how far you are prepared to go for it. And I'm not talking about it in a negative way. I think it's really drive and dedication and those kind of things that make you really advance in a career, I think.
Yeah, it's more about motivation and your soft skills. Yeah, you stayed in one company for a long time, and you developed your career inside the company. And what do you think? How can your personal brand influence your career, like your path inside the company, or it doesn't influence it?
So there is always the brand that you have as a person or a professional brand that you have. Whether you do that consciously or unconsciously, people will always pick that up. Whether you are trying to build a brand, whether you are not trying to build a brand, people will always identify you with something. And I think it's important to be conscious about your brand, and to understand what do people think when they think about me as a senior leader within the company. I think it's important for me to reflect what might my brand be, and that doesn't have to be postings or anything like that. It can also just be behavior and how people experience being around you that creates your brand. It could also be your performance, for example. Like if someone who's always performing very well, it will create a brand that people will think of. And as the larger the companies are, and the lesser people have direct interaction with you, they will listen to what the brand is of a person by hearing other people sometimes. So what you do in a company, how you behave, how you profile yourself, is going to create a brand. And that can sometimes be good, that can sometimes be bad, sometimes it can be misunderstood, I guess. The only way, I think, to really understand what your brand is by regularly asking people about it, and not always the ones that you like a lot. Is like, it's just asking questions. How do you see me? What do you think I need to do better? If you want to advance. The thing I sometimes get asked by people in my organization, what do I need to do to get to the next level? What advice could you give me for my career? And then I will always tell them, like, the first thing a hiring manager will do is ask around. Or he knows the person already, or he or she will know the person already, and will have some reflection on what the brand is of that person. And then he will ask other people. And what the brand you've created over the past couple of months/years is going to form the image that person is going to get from you. So I also don't really believe that much when it comes to intercompany advancement, in just applying for something and hoping for the best. I don't think it's that obvious to just go through a career, let's say an interview and get a job. I think most of the times a lot of jobs are gone, and a lot of those are gone because of the branding that you have within a company. And you will have branding in different parts of the company with different functions and all that. And it's important to understand what that branding is if you really want to work on changing it. And as you improve it, and then you can really change the brand to the next role that you might want in that company.
And how do you collect this? Yeah, sorry. How do you collect this feedback? So you can just come to people and ask them, "How do you see me?" Or something else.
You can ask, just have a conversation. I'd like you to have a coffee with you or whatever, and you can put some context around it and say, this is what I'm thinking. We've worked for a while now together. What do you think I'm doing good? What I'm not doing good? What advice would you give me? And any feedback is good feedback, because it's what people think of you. It doesn't mean it's the reality of its truth, but you can, how do they call it? Feedback is a gift. So you do with that what you want, but you get some perspective on how people will see you. Might not all be true, might not all be right, but it will give you a view on your brand within a company.
Yeah, and sometimes it's completely different comparing to how you perceive yourself. Yeah, so it can be really insightful.
Yes, absolutely.
And now I would like to talk about your LinkedIn profile. You develop it, and how you decided to start, and how you started doing it.
I have my profile for a long time already now. I think at some point, maybe a little bit pre-COVID, I really tried to optimize it. Also with using SSI and those kind of things. I looked at other people's profiles, like what do I like, how do I want to position it, what description do I want to give, how do I make it factual and not maybe too fluffy or too much irrelevant stuff on there. So I'm usually more like not less is more kind of person. So I try to be as concise as possible in the things that I did. I got a professional photo, and also I think most probably all my career, that everything I've done is not everything is actually on there. I think the first couple of years of my career I didn't put on there. I don't think people want to see like everything or like the jobs of 6 months to a year. So that's not on there. So yeah, that's a bit how I look, how I did it. I don't know if it's perfect. I think my SSI is probably good. But yeah, SSI was something we were tracking at some point during COVID when we really wanted to push everybody to a high, let's say, digital presence and performance and all that. I haven't looked at it in a while. In any case, it doesn't drive my behavior in how often I post something or like that. I think I try to post regularly, but like I said, only when it makes sense, when I have a topic that I feel strongly about or that I think is worthwhile sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be more authentic on social media. Yeah, it's more important than to have higher SSI. Yeah, and you mentioned that you pushed the team to develop their profiles. How did it work? Did they do it? Started being active on social media, or not?
Well, we pushed them actually quite hard because we would do like weekly trackers and all that. It was really at a point, and it was due to COVID, where we said, everybody has to sell online now. So we don't have any face-to-face anymore. So we need to absolutely maximize how we come across on the internet or via LinkedIn. And a lot of people really improved because of that. Some people did not. So some, we could remind them every week. They kept being low. They kept not paying that much attention to it. But I think you always have to see, how did it overall evolve? And overall, I think it evolved quite well. And a lot of people kept doing it. We didn't invest anymore after that into more, let's say, LinkedIn activities or trainings and all that kind of stuff. We kind of set the foundation, really set what do we want to achieve, what do we want teams to to show and those kind of things. So we set a basis for all the sales teams and the other teams. I think probably we set more of a foundation for sales teams than, let's say, the finance teams and the marketing and the, let's say, legal and all that kind of stuff. But I think we have a good sense.
And actually, when we were speaking with you before our conference, you first thing you mentioned that you tried LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but it was ineffective. It didn't work well. Can you share more about that? Why it didn't work for your team?
I don't think Sales Navigator is a bad tool. I think it's probably a good tool, but I find it too expensive compared to the free version. So that's a bit the ROI. I think free versus. I also think the premium LinkedIn service is too expensive. Like for me personally, I think it's too expensive. If I see what it would cost me on an annual basis versus what I get from the free version, I don't think there is enough ROI for it. So I don't have a premium LinkedIn license. So I guess at some point, if you need to start applying and you have limits for what you can do, I think maybe in a period where you need to find a new job, maybe then the premium license makes more sense. But if you just use it for content publication from time to time, knowing who to speak to, what's going on in the world, then I think the free version is actually quite okay. Then selling over LinkedIn, I have not found a lot of good examples from that. So I get a lot of salespeople contacting me, and in all fairness, 99% of it is bad. So it's spam. There is one post that I've always wanted to put on LinkedIn that I haven't done yet, and I really think I should do it still. Is like telling the salespeople like how to sell over LinkedIn and what good looks like, because there is so many bad LinkedIn posts, especially the in-mails and also from good companies like I even get like a LinkedIn from LinkedIn itself, a spam from time to time, or someone trying to sell me something that I think, no, why would you send me that? Or someone that wants me to write my own book or something like that. Or I think also specifically from LinkedIn that just doesn't do it for me. There is so much spam out there, I think, and a lot of people haven't really figured out yet what the right way is to sell over professional social media.
Actually, it's interesting. What do you think? What's the right way? How they need to do it?
I think LinkedIn has gotten so polluted with bad sales tactics that it's probably not obvious to do it over LinkedIn anymore. But I wouldn't disregard it. I think, first of all, it needs to be short. So long posts for me typically don't work. I don't like reading long posts. It needs to be, it cannot come across as too salesy, because people already have this feeling that there's too many salespeople on LinkedIn. It needs to relate to the person you're talking to. When you say something, you need to show that you can understand what the person you're sending it to, that you understand what they are thinking of, what their objectives might be. And then it needs to be short in like, can we connect? Can I get your assistant to like give me a 30-minute slot or whatever? And that's it. I don't trying to give too much context, trying to put too much sales stuff in there, trying to repeat too often like, I want to help you, I want to understand who you are and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't do it. You need to do research, understand who is that person, who does he work for, what could their challenges be, what are you seeing on the internet. And then if you find something that is nice and concise and that explains, I see that you are confronted with this, I think I've done this, and I'd like to see if this is appropriate for you. For me, I think that should be more than perfect. But
So the deep level of personalization, yeah.
Yes. I think it's the only way you're going to get through people that buy stuff if you do it like that. Generalization, assuming people are doing things that, or even not knowing what their role actually is a definitely delete or not respond.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it's interesting because we've experimented with different levels of personalization. For example, the deepest level of personalization when you research everything about this person and craft the very, very personalized messages, and a personalization by, for example, by some segments, like by roles, by industry or something else. And actually, they showed similar response rate and conversion rates, but you can send more messages with the just industry personalization. So in the end, you get better results. So it's in our experience. But I believe that if this person is very, very important to you, it's a top manager, for example, of a company, you really want to, to sell something, of course, you need to craft something personalized. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
I think it's going the other way around in selling is like through referring and through other people, or it's probably much more effective sometimes than just a direct email into someone, especially if it's someone who buys. Like we will see in my industry, the CIO or the CTO will typically be the person, or the CPO will be the one that buys. Going to those, it's very difficult to just from a one-on-one approach without any form of previous contact. It's very difficult to get contacts with them. So you're going to have to figure out ways to get in through the other side, and you can do that by going to other people that are maybe not as solicited that frequently as the one that buys, and then actually going through a referral, and that usually has a lot more effect. Or going in much higher. So what salespeople typically are afraid of is going to very high profiles. Or some will do it, but don't do it very effectively. But the CEO of a company, he doesn't get as much salespeople trying to sell as, for example, the guy that buys IT. But once you sell to the CEO, and the CEO says, "I'm not the right person to talk to, but it's the person below me." That person below me, when the CEO says that, he will always take your call. Because he cannot say no. It's his boss who said, "Hey, you need to talk about it." So there's all these kinds of smart ways of getting around that
Interesting.
over LinkedIn.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Warm introduction plus going to the higher level than you usually go to. Yeah, interesting.
Yes.
And also, you mentioned during the panel discussion at our conference, you mentioned that LinkedIn is not a sales tool mostly, but more of a relationship building tool. What do you think about it? Does it help you to build relationships?
Yes, I think it does, but it does require work. Well, first of all, it requires personalization. I don't really believe in making connections with people that you've never met before. I will sometimes also accept them, but in the end, it doesn't really help a lot being connected to someone you've never really met, because you still have to do the hard work afterwards if you want to meet them. Like, you cannot say, "Well, I'm connected to you on LinkedIn, so can I now have a meeting with you to talk about the product that I want to sell?" No. You're only going to be able to do that if you've actually met that person before, and you can reference to a past experience or whatever, and then go from there. So I do think it can be a sales tool. I think it's powerful in identifying your customers or identifying people in the industry or stuff like that. I use it a lot to like understand, who am I talking to? How are they positioning? What do they position? More to understand, who am I dealing with? What information do they post? What is their seniority in an organization? Where have they worked? All that kind of stuff. And then the connection itself, through a nice note, I think. And then you need to regularly update that. You cannot just assume that by posting content from time to time that your network is reading that. If I look at what I post, the people that work for me or I work with, they're usually the ones who like it. It's not always your customers. So for some reason, it's more your employees that kind of like or that you frequently contact with than actually your customers. But if you've been connected to someone, you've had interaction, you've had a relationship with them, I think it's important from time to time to update that, like reach out, what's going on with you, to keep this network alive. I think is important. I don't think I do enough of it. I think also in job applications and all that kind of stuff, it's important to keep your network alive by regular just reaching out, saying, what are you up to? How are you? That kind of stuff. And not just only do it to people that were above you, but also people that were below you. Because people's careers evolve in different speeds and all that kind of stuff. So it's important to stay close to the good relationships that you've built over the years. And if you haven't spoken to someone for 10 years, reconnecting becomes a little bit more harder than someone you've connected with on a more frequent basis.
Yeah, it makes more sense. Some soft interactions from time to time with different people. Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that your employees like and comment on your posts. I believe that LinkedIn is also an internal communication channel, so your employees usually read it and interact somehow. Yeah. Do you use it?
Yeah, they do, because they also repost it, and I repost what my boss will, for example, post, or a colleague of mine. It's definitely for all that, and I wouldn't disregard it. Or say it's not a sales tool. I think you can use it as a sales tool, but for cold messaging or cold calling and all that, I think you need to be very smart in how you're doing. And I wouldn't disregard that it's impossible, but it's not easy, because there is just so many of it on LinkedIn, and there's so many bad examples of it that it's become almost as a it's very difficult to shine through all that craziness that is going on.
Absolutely, yeah, it's very difficult. And I have a tricky question about the ROI of LinkedIn activities. Do you measure it somehow for yourself or for your team? What do you think?
No, we don't. It's difficult to measure ROI on LinkedIn, and like, what is the impact of your posts and those kind of things. I think you could look at views and likes and make some kind of an assessment on it. I think it's free, first of all. We're getting it for free, LinkedIn, and you are reaching an audience by doing it. Like if we do, for example, marketing events and all that kind of stuff costs money. And then we will see what are the attendees, what are the leads that come out of it, what is the opportunities that were generated off it. It's still a free channel. A lot of people are on it. So it is, if you do it right, I'm sure it can only have a positive ROI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can target specific people because you can connect with someone you really need and like and interested in. Yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my last question is, what advice can you give to some maybe leaders, top managers who are just looking to start or starting to build their personal brands on social media?
Yes, I think be very professional. I think a professional profile is super important, because it's the first thing people see. It's like showing up with a suit with holes in it. I think it's important to, especially depending on the type of audience that you want to reach. I think it's important to have a very professional profile. So I think a professional picture, right formatting, well-written content, most fields filled in, I think is the first thing you should think about. Then when you post things, yeah, we started with that in the beginning is authentic posts. Don't just make it about you, but make it about the impact that your business has or the things that you want to try to achieve. I don't think you should just treat it as like a tool for career advancement. I think if you show the right behaviors and all that, people will pick up what you are doing. So I think it's important to talk about the bigger picture of things like purpose and those kind of things. Yeah, and then last but not least is what we end up is like ask feedback. What works, what doesn't work. Is the frequency okay? Usually when you post something and you only have one like, typically that's not the right thing. And I would say, and I'm not 100% sure what, if you should you accept invitations from people that you don't know. I'm personally not that worried about that, or at least I usually accept, but usually I accept it. It's pretty much always salespeople, but I'm okay with that. Sometimes, most of the times they're not the best, but I'm okay accepting that. So I wouldn't really have an opinion on whether what is the right approach for unsolicited LinkedIn invites. Maybe one small detail. I think when you send an invite with a note, I think it's quite powerful actually, because most people, when you add a note, they will always reply with a note back, and it's just another little piece of professionalism that I think that can make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. You actually perfectly summarized all of the insights we've discussed today. Yeah, and thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your thoughts, because I think they were both valuable and motivational, and they gave, at least me, and I hope someone else who will be watching us, they gives energy and motivation to do things, to work, to set up high standards. So that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Olga. It was a pleasure.